The town of Oakridge was growing too fast. Once a quiet settlement surrounded by pine forests, it now stretched outward new roads, houses, and streetlights replacing the whispering woods that had stood for centuries. The forest animals were losing their home, but they didn't leave. At the border between forest and town stood a small cabin belonging to Mara Ellison, a young wildlife researcher. She had come to Oakridge to study the effects of urban expansion on local animal behavior. Every morning she hiked into the woods with her camera, notebook, and an old thermos of coffee. But what she found was unexpected. The animals were watching her. A family of deer followed her at a distance each day. Barn owl hooted precisely when she passed the same clearing. S'more, lean, with amber eyes, had begun appearing near her cabin every evening, always just out of reach, always silent. One foggy morning, Mara heard a faint cry from behind her garden. She followed the sound and found the fox, its paw tangled in an old green net left by the previous homeowners. The fox struggled, eyes wild with pain and fear. Mara knelt slowly, whispering softly, "Easy now. I'm here to help." She spent an hour freeing the animal, moving with delicate patience. When the fox was finally free, it limped a few steps, then turned to look at her. Their eyes met a moment of fragile trust before it vanished into the trees. 4 days afterward, Mara left food near the edge of the forest. At first, the fox didn't come. Then, one night, under a pale moon, it returned, watching from the shadows. It approached the food, ate, and disappeared again. From then on, the fox came back every night. Sometimes, it left something in return. A feather, a small shiny rock, even a wilted wildflower. Mara began to call him Ash. Weeks turned into months. Winter approached, and the forest grew quieter. The animals seemed uneasy, the deer became restless, the birds moved away earlier than usual, and even Ash stayed hidden longer each night. Then the machines came. Bulldozers roared through the northern woods one morning, cutting a path for a new highway. The ground trembled. Birds fled in flocks. "The fox has vanished." Mara rushed to the town council, pleading with them to stop, but her words fell on deaf ears. "Progress," they called it. "We need the road." Heartbroken, she decided to do what she could. She installed motion cameras deep in the forest, recording every sign of life that remained. She found disturbing patterns, nocturnal animals venturing closer to houses, desperate for food. Some were being hit by cars, others poised by garbage. But she also noticed something else: animals were adapting. They began moving together in small mixed groups. Foxes following deer trails, owls sharing trees with raccoons. The forest was changing to survive. That winter was brutal. It's now buried the town, and the forest went silent again. One night, a terrible storm hit, fierce winds and blinding snow. Mara's lights flickered, and she heard faint scratching at her door. When she opened it, she gasped. Ash stood there bleeding, limping, and shaking from the cold. Without hesitation, she carried him inside. He didn't fight. Simply curled by the fireplace, eyes half closed, trusting her completely. For 2 days, Mara cared for him. She cleaned his wounds, fed him bits of cooked chicken, and spoke softly, as though to an old friend. When the storm finally passed, Ash stood by the open door, looking out at the snow-covered trees. He turned to her once, a long, silent glance, and disappeared into the white. Mara never saw him again. Spring came late that year. The snow melted, revealing scars on the land, fallen trees, eroded soil, empty burrows. But life has a way of returning. Flowers sprouted, deer returned, and birds sang again. Mara kept studying, kept watching, but something inside her had changed. She started organizing wildlife nights in Oakridge, gatherings where townspeople could learn about the forest and the creatures that lived within it. Children listened wide-eyed as she showed pictures of foxes, owls, and deer, not as pests, but as neighbors. Gradually, people began to care. They stopped leaving trash by the forest edge. They dimmed their lights at night. The council even agreed to create a quiet strip, a buffer zone where no construction would be allowed. And one evening, as Mara walked home through the dusky forest, she saw movement in the trees. A fox, smaller, younger, stepped out. It had the same amber eyes as Ash. It stared for a moment, then trotted closer. Dropping something at her feet, a smooth stone, perfectly round. Mara smiled through tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "He taught you well." Slow. The fox blinked once, turned, and melted back into the trees.